Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the Marketing Empress. Today, we look at the second video in the series of consumer behavior. This one focuses on the factors affecting consumers while making a purchase decision. But before we get into the content of this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel by hitting the bell notification icon so that the next time a video gets uploaded, you guys are notified first. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, as a consumer, whenever we buy anything, knowingly or unknowingly, there are multiple factors that influence your buying choices. These can be further divided into the following categories. Number 1, cultural. Number 2, social. Number 3, personal. And lastly, some psychological factors. For a marketer, it becomes extremely crucial to be aware of each of these factors in order to come up with that perfect marketing strategy. Now let's look at each of these in detail. Let's start with cultural factors. Now, culture is the most important factor that influences a consumer right from birth. As a growing child, you look at your parents and make some general list of do's and don'ts that helps you to choose products even later in life. So, as a marketer, it's extremely crucial to determine the cultural shifts that may take place in the minds of the consumer. Let's look at some examples of these cultural shifts. One of the biggest examples can be the sudden movement towards healthy food products and healthier lifestyle. Other example can be that of ensuring that your leisure is not compromised and hence you end up buying a microwave or another product like that. It's important to note that eventually we also need to take into account subcultures. These may be with respect to religion, social class, nationalities, etc. Social class is not only determined by income, and this is crucial to know because there are multiple other factors that determine the social class of an individual. Now let's move on to social factors. Now, social factors take into account the kind of influences a consumer may come across when he or she belongs to a specific group. The behavior tends to be in sync with how that group generally behaves. The people belonging to this particular group may be further broken down into the following categories. Number 1, the initiator. Now, this is the first person who suggests an idea to buy or try a specific product. Second, an influencer. This is the person whose views or advice affects the way the purchases take place within that particular group. Third, the decider. This is any person within the group who has the financial authority to make the final choice with respect to the purchase of the product. Fourth, the buyer. This is the person who will actually make the purchase. Please note that it may be the case within a group that the decider and the buyer may be different individuals. And lastly, we have the user. Now, this is the person who will actually use the product that is bought. This individual may not be the buyer, and hence, as marketers, we must be able to understand the difference between the target and the person who is actually using the product and target our communication accordingly. It's important to ensure that your communication is perfectly targeted towards each of these categories of individuals for best results. Let's move on to personal factors. Now, these factors are exclusive in nature. What I mean to say by this is that These factors are unique to individuals and cannot be generalized for a group in total. These will include factors like who in the family of this individual is responsible for the purchase decision, etc. Other personal factors will include age, sex, race, etc. Lastly, we move on to analyzing psychological factors. Now, note that psychological factors are quite interesting and take into account the following factors. Number 1, motives. Let's understand what are motives. In simple terms, a motive is any internal force that shifts a person's direction towards satisfying a need. In most cases, a consumer's actions are determined based on a set of motives instead of a specific motive alone. We can analyze motives in consumer behavior thoroughly through Maslow's hierarchy of needs model. But we will not look at that here. However, if you wish to understand the model in detail, please let me know in the comments below and I will make a separate video on the same for your understanding. Next, let's look at perception. Now, perception can be defined as the process where a consumer selects, organizes, and interprets information in order to derive some meaning out of it. So this just means that any and everything that the consumer comes across may not be directly linked to their minds. Some of this information may be eliminated. This is done through any of these three ways. Number 1, selective exposure. This means we tend to select inputs to be exposed to our awareness. Second, selective distortion. This means we bring in changes or try to twist the information we are exposed to if the same is inconsistent with our beliefs. Third and the last one is selective retention. This means that we only give importance to or remember those inputs that support our beliefs and forget the rest. Next, let's look at attitudes. In simple terms, attitudes are former opinions, positive or negative, that are developed by consumers on regular basis. Now, most of the times, we as marketers may not be aware of the root cause of the development of these attitudes. But we need to ensure that the attitudes are changed or altered in a way that our product benefits from it. Also, attitudes can influence consumer choices very strongly. Hence, it is always better to have a thorough understanding of the same before coming up with any communication to target. Next, we look at prior knowledge. Now, this is an important parameter that takes into account the information that consumers are already aware of. The task for marketers then is to ensure either of these two things. Number 1, make the information stronger by providing more knowledge about it. Second, provide such knowledge that the existing information that the consumer is already aware of is replaced with new information. Our communication needs to be centered around either of these two options. Next, we look at family influences. Note that in consumer behavior, the most important consumer group is that of family. Family plays a major role in choosing or not choosing certain products. And hence, as marketers, we must ensure that our communication targets those crucial members of a family who are responsible in the decision-making process. And lastly, we look at social class and lifestyles. This is another important group that influences consumer behavior. It all depends on which social class you belong to. If it's a higher class, your choice of products will be altered accordingly, and a lower class consumer may settle for cheaper products. It's important to note that based on the social class, you are more likely to prioritize certain parameters before purchasing a product. For example, if we were to target the consumer in a lower class segment, we need to be aware that these consumers are bound to be price sensitive, and hence the emphasis must be made on those things. So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something from it. Ensure that you like, share and subscribe to the channel by hitting the bell notification icon so that whenever the next video on consumer behavior is released, you are notified first. Until next time, bye bye.